going to have him talk about it because, you know, these are sort of the secret sauce things that all singers and vocalists and musicians who are geeky about this stuff like us want to know. And it's super interesting, just like opera buffs. The guy I had on last week, Kevin Cassini, who's an attorney, he's an opera nut in Connecticut. He's a huge guy. I will have to connect you.
Yes, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
And we are live here.
Wonderful.
Welcome everybody to our Songwriters Learning Lab and our session kicking off here this evening with the only Mark Thress of Vocals360global.com, markthress.com, founder of Vocal 360, and just such a multi-talented, multifaceted individual. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'd also like to welcome Beth Raybeck Hall, our maven, our queen, our leader of the pack here at Music Vocal 101, the queen of and of course, I'm Justin, the guy in the background asking some questions, doing some promotion. And we want to welcome everybody watching this live as well as on the replay, because I know we've got people from Mark's audience, our audience, people going to be joining us throughout the broadcast. We've had people checking in from around the globe already in the questions that got submitted ahead of time. So we are super fired up to have you here and really going to focus on helping you find and develop and craft your legacy voice. And I'm going to let Mark talk a whole heck of a lot more about that. But just because I know Mark doesn't really like to brag on himself too much, as I mentioned, he is super multi-talented. He is a operatic soprano, correct?
Tenor.
No, tenor.
Excuse me.
Close. It would have been way cooler if I was a soprano. So we should have left that in there. But the tenor is what I am.
Puccini.
Excuse me. Operatic tenor, classically trained at just 17 years old, was selected to participate in the Governor's School at the Lincoln Park Performing Arts Center, chosen to premiere and record part of an upcoming musical. And, you know, from there took off, has had a great career in singing, is a commercial musician, has had experiences all over the place, and very interesting and probably of note to those of us listening, he's also a scholar and a professor, teaches this stuff not just practically, but also academically. So, you know, you have those people who they know the book stuff, but they don't know the street stuff. Mark really brings them both together and combines the two. So you're going to get the real raw performing element of it, as well as like the theory, the thought, and the why behind all of that. So without further ado, I want to welcome Mark and Beth this evening. And of course, all of you watching either live or on the replay. But how are you guys this evening, and welcome.
Fantastic.
Thanks for being here. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much, Justin and Beth. This is wonderful. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're so excited to have you here. And I will tell all of our folks, we've been getting questions, as Justin mentioned. Lutho, we're going to get to your question. He's in South Africa, a songwriter. And I wanted to tell all of you who are watching, if you would go ahead and like our channel and you know, subscribe to it. We would love that. But Mark has another component to his illustrious career that is very unusual. And he has also been involved in research, not only with autism and training and singing for that, but developing some really interesting neuroscientific tools. And I want to talk a little bit about that and how it's related, because now more and more we're finding that the neuroscience is behind singing and music tech and everything. It's all related. So we're gonna ask you about that. But first, Mark has been an extraordinarily accomplished singer, and I do mean a real singer, like opera-ready singer, and was chosen as one of the top tenors in the United States. He was like the tenor when he was 17 years old. And he developed his passion for music very early. And I will let him share now just what drew you into music and singing.
Well, thanks, Beth. Yeah. First of all, this opportunity to be able to share what I've been through is really a pleasure, because as I went through my musical career, I always really looked up to guys, who were tenors or fellow singers that were going through this kind of stuff too. So to have the opportunity to be able to talk about it on this sort of platform is really fun, and I appreciate it. Yeah, just to kind of go over how I got to be where I am and what involved me in all the music. Like you said, I got started at an early age. I started doing musical theater when I was young, and I kind of just enjoyed it because I had the opportunity to sing and perform and be with some friends. And then I really discovered that I had a knack for music when I was around 17. And as you mentioned before, I got accepted into the Governor's School of the Arts in Pennsylvania, and there I had a really incredible opportunity where I was actually able to perform music from an upcoming musical. And they flew in artists from Yamaha that were in California, and we put together this huge project. And I'll never forget, I was on stage singing, and I thought, man, if I could do this for the rest of my life, like, this is living, So
and you are.
and here I am, right? I'm still doing it, but it's been great ever since. And at that moment, I thought, this is what I want to do. And at the demise of my parents, I originally had applied to school for neuroscience. So, Beth, I don't know if we talked about this previously.
We did.
I had gotten into programs for neuroscience because my passion at the time, as it was musical, was also to study the way music affected the brain and to find a cure for Alzheimer's. And so, as fate would have it,
I will be talking to you soon.
Okay, I'll see how much I can contribute to that conversation, but I'm looking forward to having it. Yeah, as it would happen, my beloved grandmother, wound up actually passing away from Alzheimer's. So it really became a close topic for me. And when we do get the chance to speak on it, it's kind of unique how everything came full circle. So I actually, at the demise of my parents, like I said, chose to go and do the music and science route. And at this point, now I'm coming from a jazz, pop, and R&B background with a little bit of musical theater. I didn't know too much about classical music except for Pavarotti, and that was it. So I knew that if I wanted to do music at a high level, I needed to get the best training. And at the time, I figured the best training would be classical music. So I went into a program at James Madison University where I was enrolled in a music program, and then also would do neurology and anatomy and physiology, neurogenic disorders, that kind of stuff in the SLP, communication sciences and disorders department. So I kind of had my foot in both different areas there. And I hopped right into singing arias. Within my second year, I was doing all different operas and at the same time producing albums for my a cappella group, which actually got the chance to tour. And I'm proud to say the album that I produced with them actually won a national award for the best male collegiate album in the country. So that's the same, it's CARA Awards, CARA, Contemporary A Cappella Recording Awards. It's the same award ceremony that the Pentatonics are in, right? So that was pretty awesome. And again, at the same time I'm doing this, I'm competing classically. And actually, I was 21 when I won the Nats national program or national competition rather, and I placed first, the first tenor in the country. So for my category, so that was pretty awesome. And go ahead, yeah.
No, I was going to ask you a question. Finish what you were going to say.
No, I was just going to say the beauty in my mind of all of it was I had the opportunity to not only focus on the thing that would drive my voice, and that was like the classical training, right? But I also was exercising my muscles and my creativity in vocal arranging, in producing albums, in studio work. On the side, I was also working out of an assisted living home, singing and playing. So I was practicing my commercial singing and entertaining people. And then I was also at a hospital working in an oncology center in some iPad music therapy research. So I was really seeing the effects of music and how I could move people with all of that. And that really was the thing that was driving me. And as you'll probably learn from our conversation here, I like to do a lot of different things. My brain is just kind of this spiral of nonsense, I guess. But that was the thing that fueled me. And ultimately, I think when it led me here today, I mean, I have other things that I went on to, but where I am today is a culmination of all of that. I could not be where I am today had I not become the opera singer that I was or am. And I could not be as valuable as I am as a commercial coach to these aspiring artists if I did not know the business from, working with people in the business and also developing that end of things. So
Mark, you now are a professor at two prominent universities here in Nashville, Belmont University, which has one of the most prestigious music industry and music education programs in the country. And I've been to your vocal showcase with your students, and they're unbelievable.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really, really terrific, and they're really talented. And I was very curious. You and I have spoken about, I said, oh, you're creating vocal ninjas. And so what I wanted to have you share with people in our audience is how important, because you have a scientific background along with your musical training, the performance physiology and what you have to do to treat your instrument, which your voice is your instrument. And it doesn't matter whether you're singing opera or you're a country singer or you're singing commercials or you're on a cruise ship or whatever your gig is. We all know when we get hoarse, it's not a lot of fun, but if you have to go out on tour or you have a bunch of engagements, talk about how you developed your technique, which is rather different than a lot of sort of mass vocal coaching programs.
Sure. So if you take a look at any prominent professional vocalist and performer that's had a career that has spanned at least 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, all of them share a lot of the same tendencies. And I think young aspiring artists look at their future career and they take it for granted. They think that they're just going to be able to do the things that they tell you in school, and that will get you to where you need to be. Celine Dion still has a voice coach. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why Celine Dion is the queen. There's something behind all of it, right? So in my background and the research that I've done both in the lab and then actually, out in the field being a performer and singing for hours and hours and hours, you start to gather this collection of knowledge that is really palpable and topical and something that just simply works. And so in my experience, I like to teach based off the science and the physiology that I know and the topical research that I'm finding and how that affects the voice. As a singer and as a performer, there's only a couple things that you really can pay attention to and really prepare for in your environment. And one of those things is your own physical health. You're not going to be able to change the acoustical settings of the space you're singing in. You're not going to be able to change that particular environment. But with your own health, you can, be drinking more water, eating food that is sustainable for you as an individual. And we'll get to this in a second because it is very specific to the person that you are and what fits your body. So when I work with my artists, and I'll speak based off of my experience, when I work with my artists, I sit them down, and this is why I call myself a mentor, because a lot of what Beth and I, we're both doing the same thing. We're mentoring these artists. It's not simply, hey, these are the notes that you'll sing, and this is how you'll sing them. It's no, in order to be the best vocalist that you can possibly be, it doesn't just mean that you need to practice these scales. That's not even a tenth of what you need, And so when I sit down with my artists, I make sure that they understand that their livelihood is a part of their vocalism and their music and the way that they're actually, portraying their message as an artist.
Well, what's the very first thing when a student comes into your studio or you're working with somebody over at one of the universities? What is the very, very first thing that you tell people that they need to be aware of or they need to do, just, starting at ground zero?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. I would say instinctively, I always make a note of getting to know the individual. I can't tell you how many times I've been with coaches and voice teachers that, for lack of a better word, impose these practices on me or have imposed these practices on me, and they just didn't fit me, and had they listened to what I had done and what I aspired to be, they would have been able to better tailor their approach to what fit me. So I always get to know my artists first and foremost. Like, what are you about? Who are you? You know, like why are
Talk
you
about
doing
their
music?
sound.
Yes. Yeah, we talk about, and that all goes hand in hand, Beth. That's kind of the same thing because, you know, I would never be the next pop singer, but I might do some pop opera, or I might be doing some jazz and stuff. And in fact, I'm going to be doing maybe an album in the spring, which I'll tell you about some later. Yeah. But anyway, there's a lot that goes into that. And so when I see an artist, the first thing we're going to talk about is, you know, why are you doing this? And then when they begin singing, what are you singing for? Like, what is your message? And how does that align? Who are you as an artist, and how can you develop your legacy voice? And that's really the key. It's like, what path are you taking to develop your legacy as an artist? And then my goal is to bring that out of them. As a teacher, I don't, you know, there's only so many exercises I can give somebody to be able to get them to be a better singer. But until they figure themselves out, that's when the true magic happens, you know?
Well, we have a couple great singers on right now. I want to give a shout out to Jenny Teeter, who is just an incredible singer and musician and songwriter. And anyway, these are the kind of folks that I know you've worked with and know. And I think that people, when they're starting out as a vocalist, they try to compare themselves with someone else. Like, you know, if you're a high soprano, you want to have the Celine Dion or Gaga, you know, chops at the top. But that doesn't always work, does it?
No, not at all. And I think that's a good point to make because, you know, it's important for you to recognize people that you aspire to be. But ultimately, it's always going to boil down to this. It's going to boil down to, why are you doing what you're doing? You know, what message can you deliver to help other people that might be going through the same thing? And I think a healthy understanding of where your voice lies is really valuable. You know,
so do you assess that on the first, like when you sit down with someone, do you have an assessment tool?
Yeah, if you want to talk about specifics. So what is the first to, gotcha. I see the question now. So I can apply my answer directly to that. So typically when a voice, student or a client walks into my lesson, I will have them sing something for me. It's on occasion, and this happens with classical music, you know, we go through these exercises and we do this kind of things, but with commercial music, I kind of just want to hear where you're at. So vocalists will come in, they'll sing something for me, and within probably the first 10 or 15 seconds, or verse or chorus or something like that, I'll understand exactly where they're going with their voice. And my goal is to get their speaking and singing voice to be, you know, a part of them. How can they relate their message? How can they best access their voice? So we can go all into the nitty gritty of the actual vocalisms. Beth, I don't know if that's something you want to save for later, but typically I love to expand the range and the color of people's voices. Ultimately, there's always a part of someone's voice that makes them unique. And again, my job as an artist and also as a coach is to find that uniqueness and exploit it in artists, because that is ultimately what is going to deliver their career, you know?
It also builds confidence, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. It certainly does.
I mean, back when I was doing demos, I would have these terrific people come in, and they were just like, they were the people, right? They did everything. And I would get intimidated because I was like, I can never sing like that, you know? But I think if you're starting with the fundamentals of who are you, what do you want, who, you know, what do you, legacy. I love that use of the term. What is your legacy voice? That's so cool. I've never heard that before. Maybe it's a term in your profession, but I
actually that's a term I use for Vocal 360 actually.
Well, you should trademark it.
You know, I might. You heard it here.
Okay, so now you've got me hooked. I'm not uncomfortable because you are valuing me and not trying to put me in a box, which I think maybe in earlier iterations of vocal coaching, people would say, oh, you're a so-and-so, so this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And this is how we're going to do it. And I once had a vocal coach who was really very tremendous, and her big claim to fame was her turkey baster. And but anyway, you obviously do not think one size fits all. So
no, not at all.
So what do you do with someone? Do you, after you've accomplished your, like, who are you? What do you want to be? Where are you in terms of the spectrum of music? Are you on the classical side? Are you on the jazz or pop? What's the next thing you do with people to get them off to a good start?
Well, I want to speak about something you just mentioned too, about fitting into a box. So with the classical realm, and I don't know how many people actually know about this, but there's called a Fach system, and people fit within that particular Fach, a voice type basically, and there's all different kinds. But what tends to happen is you're singing a song that someone has sung near perfectly for hundreds of years. And so you have a level of attainment that you have to reach to be able to get to that. So there's this sort of series of practice techniques that you need to do, and a level of achievement that you need to have as a classical artist to get to that level. As a commercial artist, you know, when you walk through my door, you are your individual person. You know, you are bringing something unique about yourself, and it's my job to help you get there. So after we've been acquainted and I figure out what you're about and how your voice is going to develop, I find the uniqueness of your voice, and then I figure out how to capitalize on that. As a songwriter, a lot of artists who come through my door, or I work now virtually, right? A lot of the artists that I work with, they will be phenomenal singers, and oftentimes they're phenomenal copycats. And in many ways, that's wonderful. That's great. I love if you can sound exactly like Ariana Grande. But guess what? She's making a ton of money as Ariana Grande, and you're not going to be able to be the next Ariana Grande. Just like I'm not going to be the next Andrea Bocelli or Josh Groban. It's just not going to happen in the exact same way. So using that as a threshold in many ways, like the classical realm, you know, there's a threshold of Pavarotti was an amazing singer. And if you can reach that level of achievement, then hey, you've done a pretty good job.
A big man. He's also a very large man.
Yeah, so don't try to eat as much as he could in the same sitting, but at the same time, you know, that level of vocal achievement, you've been somewhere. So using the Ariana Grande analogy, you come into the lesson, we're figuring out who you are, you're singing music by other artists. When it comes down to you singing music by, you know, something that you wrote or co-wrote, then it's a matter of like, okay, when you go into a live setting, or if you're going into a studio setting, how are you going to prepare your voice? How are you going to be in the best shape vocally to be able to deliver your message? And it's different. There's a difference performing in a studio versus performing, you know, live. And Beth, if you don't mind me continuing down this path, I think this might be valuable. Judy Rodman, who is my beloved mentor and a dear friend who's here in Nashville, taught me a lot of this stuff. Phenomenal songwriter. Yeah, she has a book and everything too, which is great. A lot of what we discuss is so true, because artists, when they're singing out in public and stuff, you have the energy of the audience to be able to vibe off of, right? But when you get into the studio, it's totally different. It's just you in a box, you know, singing to a microphone with a guy, you know, a sound engineer producing your music. And there's
might be asleep.
Well, yeah, it could, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's another harsh reality, that when you get so excited about going into a studio to record, depending on your situation and what your relationship is with that vendor, they're not as excited always as you are. So, you know, you got to take that confidence in the studio with you, as you said, because there's not a crowd sitting out there clapping, or, you know. No,
there isn't. And I have a tip for this. So what I like to try to do, and I do my best to do this, is originality. Yes, exactly. I love Jenny. Jenny's wonderful. I'll talk about her in a second, perhaps. But it's so important to. Let me backtrack for a second. When you are writing your own song, right, you can get this sense of numbness from saying the same words time and time again. You know, you've written your own music, but that changes when you're in an audience, because then you start to realize, like, oh, there's a different energy of the crowd, or these people are responding, or my bandmate did something different on that solo. You know, it's fresh. When you're in a studio, or when you're in any other productive setting, you need to create that space for yourself. So like I was saying before, I always try to give something practical that you can do, something valuable that you can take away from the stuff that we work on. And one of those things is a practice habit. And the practice habit is putting yourself in a performance situation rather than just a practice situation. So again, with my artists and the people I work with, we'll do all the exercises and all that kind of stuff. And then I say, sing. And usually it's really not that great. And it's not because they're a bad singer. It's because they're in practice mode. So my job is to take them out of practice mode and say, okay, now we worked on all of that stuff. You can go home and spend hours on that. But now we're going to create the environment of you performing. This is when you're talking about the emotions of the song. What do you feel? How are you expressing yourself? How can we break into this new space with your, with your music? You know, if you're singing the same words in the same song time and time again, how can we make it fresh? You know, how can that always be new for you? So that's something that's really valuable.
Do you have to experiment with different things to that point?
Could you say that one more time, please? I didn't hear.
I said, do you have the singer then experiment with different things to find out which sounds the best, which feels right? Oh
yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you're in a situation where you can change the key on an artist, this screws with them all the time. It's like the number one biggest thing. Change the key. Sing it up a half step. What? I can't sing it up. Just sing it up a half step. Sing it down a half step. Hey, why don't you sing it faster or sing it slower or do it acoustically? I can't tell you how many times I'll have someone, you know, with a guitar playing their music and I'll say, okay, give me the chords. I'll play it on the piano. And all of a sudden I start playing diamond chords or I start, you know, embellishing things and they're like, whoa, that was cool. And it's this sort of collaborative experience, just like any other creative experience. When you're in a group of people, you bounce information off of one another. It's that jam session feel, right? So my advice for people, and that's just a couple things that I've done in the past, but my advice for artists and people that are diving into this kind of stuff is present your music to a lot of people whom you trust, and maybe those who don't actually know your music, and get the feedback. Let it be this amoeba that changes. That's okay. You know, how many songs do you know, and this is rhetorical, but how many songs do you know that sound one way on an album in a recorded session, and then they're hardly ever played the same again? Because the people in the band, they're always changing it up. All the pros, you look at was it Songs About Jane, the Maroon 5 album? Those guys, that was one of my favorite albums by them, by the way. But those guys are never playing the same music again. They're always messing around, and now they're obviously more popified. But the things change, and the ability to have that flexibility is really what allows you to thrive emotionally as an artist. That's what it comes down to.
That's so awesome. What about some vocalizing techniques? How do you start off with that before you actually dive into the singing? Do you recommend scales? Do you go through a set of different warm-ups?
Yeah.
Or have a preferred warm-up that you advise people to use?
I'll tell you something specifically. I think I should be hooked up here. I'll hit my keyboard. It should be on, and it's going to run through my interface in a second. So I'll give you something that's really interesting. And I discovered this a couple years ago when I was in Ohio working in a lab. So the optimal speaking register for anybody, but more importantly for a singer, is about a perfect fourth above your lowest singable note. Here's why this is important. So I've been speaking for hours today, so my lowest note is garbage right now, but I could probably sing a G right now, maybe down to an F. The key is, as a professional voice user, if you can manipulate your voice, that's a bad choice of words, but if you can utilize your voice about a fourth above, or maybe a little bit higher than your lowest speakable note or singable note, you can use your voice in an effective way. So one of the first things that I actually approach is I approach someone's speaking voice. Now, this is unique. This is not something that people usually do. People do scales and all that kind of stuff. But if an artist comes in here and say they're like an indie pop artist, and they have this kind of breathy, maybe a little bit of raspy tone, and they're coming to me and they're saying, hey, you know what? I'm trying to expand my range, and I'm trying to get a clearer, more powerful tone in a microphone. Guess what the first thing is that we do? I hand them a book, or I bring up an article, and I have them read. And so this is something.
Really?
Yes, this is something I just did this afternoon or this early evening at like 4 o'clock today with one of my artists. She said, I keep having this gravel in my voice. And of course, you go through all the questions and say, well, what have you been up to? What have you been doing? Whatever. The first thing I actually do is I teach them how to use their speaking voice, because Beth, you and I both know, what is the one thing that we use more than our singing voice, our speaking voice. So where do most of the habits actually come into play? Our speaking voice. So if you can characterize that a little bit more to elevate it past that kind of gravelly, rough tone, then you're already starting off in a position where your voice is a lot more free and flexible. So we fix the speaking voice. I get them into a position where they're feeling really comfortable. And then I say, okay, let's do some vocalizations that really bring the sound into the mask. So thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. It's great. It's really helpful. And I hope you use it and let us know what you think. But one of the exercises I use is a combination of or N. Yeah, I will. I'll show you an exercise. So this is sort of paired from Judy Rodman's middle voice circle stretches, but I love this version of the exercise for a couple of reasons, and I'll tell you why. So I usually take my singers in their speaking voice, and I'll make sure it has been a long day. But anyway, I'll bring them into their speaking voice to kind of make sure that there's not any extra pressurization or pressurized sounds in there. Usually, especially now when we're during COVID, people are speaking into microphones that are far away. Teachers are basically yelling because they're trying to get into the classroom and really engage with their students. But so we free them up by doing this, or I free them up by doing this. I'll take them in their speaking register. I'm kind of talking down here, and I'll do an NG exercise, as in sung, and it's just a simple glide.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So this
So
glide
cool.
technique is really lovely because it just kind of helps you relax and focus in on the clarity of the tone. You can add another step to it by placing your thumb. Oops, where are we here? Your thumb underneath your jaw. I can't do it while I'm talking, but if you keep your thumb underneath your jaw and make sure that the base of your jaw is a little bit more mushy and relaxed while you're singing, you can ensure that you're not overpressurizing with the base of your tongue. There's a muscle there like the mylohyoid muscle or something. I don't know what it is, but if that is relaxed, then that can actually help ensure that you are doing it healthfully. So take their speaking voice, do some glides up until about where they're going to change. Now I'm in the male register down here. We would do the same up for females. I'll actually take them into their chest voice. Oops, sorry. A little bit here. I stop in the mix. I'm not negotiating the mix at all right now. I always bring my head voice down into the mix. So the mixed voice is really important because that's a healthy balance of your chest voice and your head voice. And if you're moving up just from your chest voice, everybody thinks that they need to sing their high notes to practice. You need to sing everything else to practice your high notes. But what I like to do is I actually take their head voice and move it down. So another fun exercise that I like to do is the same thing moving down. Start the top one on an NG or an N. It can be in a nice heady, lofty tone, and then on the way down, it has to be nice and bright and forward. So you get the nice flexibility of your head voice, bringing it down into your mask, and it's a lot harder than it seems. The last thing I'm going to give you too, this is something that I'm sure there's someone in the world that does it. I don't know, but this is something that I feel like I've kind of coined. I do a combination of those two things that actually allows you to get into your head voice and connect the two. You could do this with lip buzzes. People do it with sirens as well. But I find the most useful way of doing it is actually on an N or an NG and moving your jaw. And so I've actually created this little topsy-turvy. That's funny. I love it. I love it.
Looking all at me like I'm crazy, but I like this.
That's so funny. Well, the other exercise that I do is a combination again of those two things that I did, still on the NG, and I've used this for myself. And I'm telling you, it's one of the sure signs that you've figured out you've been able to get from your chest voice into your head voice and beyond seamlessly. Ultimately, as a singer, you want to build up the connectivity of your chest voice and in your mix, because that is the most powerful thing that shows up in the microphone. It's not a matter of being loud, and I learned this the hard way. Coming from an opera singer, believe me, I know how to be loud, but I don't know how to be powerful, and that was a big thing for me, learning how to be powerful. So my exercise that I have been working on and use a lot is this sort of topsy-turvy one. It's been a long day, so we'll see how it goes. But same thing with the NG. And then I'll take it up the octave. And again,
I want to listen to you all night.
you're very kind. Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So as you transfer into this, I'm seamlessly connecting. There will not be any breaks unless I'm exhausted and there's going to be a vocal break. But now what I've done in this practice habit is I'm entraining my body to be powerful at all parts of my register. And ultimately, that is the goal as a singer. You want to be expressive and communicative and powerful at all different ranges of your voice, with the understanding that you can manipulate it and be breathy if you need to be. You could be sentimental and emotional and all that kind of stuff and have intentional voice breaks. But if power is what you're searching for, this is the exercise to go to.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got a question, like I mentioned before we started, from Lutho, and I think this is a good time to ask you, what should you eat when you're getting ready to sing, or you're getting ready to come into a practice session with you and you're going to be giving your voice a workout? What do you recommend in the way of nutrition, or what not to eat?
Okay. I love this question because I've struggled with it and I still struggle with it. But I've asked this question my entire life. And I found personally for me that it's not even necessarily what I eat. There is a list of things that I do not eat as a singer. But there's a shorter list of rules that I follow for myself. I don't eat spicy food typically, because when you start to engage your diaphragm and start to flex your abdominal muscles, you get that acid reflux and indigestion, and that can interrupt your singing. I don't eat a lot before I sing. I eat enough to be satiated, but I don't eat enough to be, bloated. I, in particular, pay attention to my hydration and then really lean proteins. So proteins and veggies. It's really quite simple. Nothing special for me. I think it's really individual. Some people feel great eating a steak of potatoes and veggies. I would eat all of that except for the potatoes. Probably just eat a little bit because I don't like all the starch. But in general, you have to realize it's so specific to who you are as an individual. Eating food is not going to affect your vocal folds themselves directly. It affects everything else around the vocal folds. Hydration is what affects the vocal folds, and inhalation of any particulate matter. So, smoking is affecting your vocal folds. But if you're going to be eating stuff, you typically want things that are going to be giving you energy and hydrating you and keeping your mouth in a position where you feel comfortable singing. If you love eating spicy foods, by all means, if that makes you a great singer, do it. Who cares? I actually knew a classical singer, and a big no-no. You always hear no caffeine, no dairy, no carbs, all that crap, right? I know a singer from Virginia who is a Verdi soprano, and she used to drink milk. She used to drink a glass of milk because she used to like the way it felt when she was singing. Not my thing, but hey, some people do it. I'll tell you, my keys to the castle are apple juice. I drink apple juice, man. Apple juice is my go-to now. I can't eat apples. That's another story. I think I have some weird allergy to it, or maybe something they put on them. But apple juice is my go-to because of the pectin. And then also glycerin, I believe, is another good chemical. You'll have to fact check me on that one. But glycerin is usually found in like Luden's cough drops and that kind of stuff, lozenges. That keeps the mouth nice and moist. There's a lot of throat sprays out there that claim to do a bunch of different things too. That's a whole other topic of conversation. But again, food that's healthy, that makes you feel good and gives you energy, things that are not going to get you gunky, and it's really personal. So just choose whatever makes you happy, and things, it's going to make you satiated for the rest of the time you're going to be singing.
No menthol?
No menthol.
Someone just mentioned that in the chat.
No menthol. Who said
Thanks,
that?
Savannah. That was great.
No. Yes, Savannah knows what she's talking about.
I would think also, she also made a comment about, what do you call it? My brain is dead tonight. Carbonated beverages have the bubbles and stuff. So if you're going to have something to drink as a water, maybe a La Croix isn't the right thing to have.
I am so on board with that. That is not my thing. I can't drink seltzer water either before I sing. Some people get really specific about like cold versus warm water or tea versus that's not my thing either. Here's the goal, right? It's to have a routine that helps you, that you don't have to worry about. if you start paying attention to all of your food and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this food because it has this in it, or oh my goodness, I didn't have my apple juice before I sang. You can't be in that state of mind before you sing, you know. But if you know that acidic food doesn't work for you or carbonated beverages don't work, then just don't do that. Do the thing that works for you and don't stress over it.
Oh, that's so good. I want to ask you two things before we run out of time. Hi, Sheridan. Thanks for being here. And another terrific singer-songwriter. Check out her album, Sheridan Gates. She's really talented and lovely. But let's talk about some absolute no-nos that you should be aware of and try not to do or never do for your voice. Because, you know, I know there are some.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, and it goes back to what I was mentioning before. When you're speaking and when you're using your voice, however you're using your voice, your body is going to remember, right? There's an actual figure, and I may get this wrong. I think it's 48 hours. Your body, your vocal folds and your voice in general respond in the same way that your muscles atrophy, and there's a 48-hour time period. So if you're doing something positively for 48 hours, you will continue to do that. Or shall I say, if you're doing something positively, that muscle memory will stay for roughly about 48 hours. When you stop doing that, if you go back to having a bad habit, your body will start to entrain in those bad habits. So speaking healthfully, drinking lots of water. I mean, all the stuff that, you know, your mom used to tell you, your grandparents used to tell you when you were younger. All those things are really helpful for you. I know a lot of artists now that like vape, e-cigarettes and that kind of stuff. The particulate matter for that is not good. Despite a lot of singers that like to smoke cigarettes, that gives them that kind of characterized sound. I get it. I understand. I know what you're seeking for. It goes back to the legacy voice. Are you trying to be an artist that exists for 4 years? Or are you trying to be an artist like Celine Dion or any of the greats that you can think of that, you know, have a persistent career that is consistent vocally and their voice is recognizable, you know? But in general, like I do, I'll speak about myself because I think it's the easiest way to, you know, show my own experience. But I have something called a vocal mist, and I don't know that Aaron's actually on this right now, but vocal mist is one of my new favorite devices. It's a saline nebulizer. The gentleman who created it, his name's Aaron, and he's out in LA. Fabulous, fabulous musician, entrepreneur. He and I are like, you know, on the same page. So this device actually is a nebulizer for saline, which is great for the vocal folds. Yeah.
Christina, it's too fun.
I think that's Christina for sure. Yeah. But yeah, cigarettes are not going to help your singing voice for the long term. They may make you sound really cool, but hey, if you can't breathe and your voice, the mucosa is changing, I don't think that's healthy. But at any rate, this saline nebulizer is really great because the saline obviously is not bad for you. It's healthy for you, and it breaks down the mucus. So before a gig or before I have to speak for a long time, I put that thing on my mouth. I inhale the cool saline. It knocks out all the gunk. I can clear things out, and I'm good to go. You know?
Cool.
So,
that is so awesome because my next question, as it pertains to before we open it up for questions, I mean, you and I could talk all night.
We really could about that.
I mean, this is so interesting, and you are obviously, I bet people like want to sleep on your doorstep, and you wake up in the morning to go get the paper, and there's singers out there. But what about when people? I know two of our guests tonight in the chat. They, before COVID, would go on tours and they would do a lot of house concerts and gigs. So what do you recommend to singer-songwriters or other performers as something to make sure you take with you in terms of your practice when you're going on the road? Because that can be stressful. You're driving or flying, or, you know, you're not eating right. You may not be sleeping right. So what are your golden nuggets for the person?
You asked the right person, because I have a couple that only my closest artists really know about this. And I pestered Jenny, who I think might be still here. I pestered her about getting one of these. I'll tell you a couple of the things that I do. And I promise you, I'm not a liar. I'm a terrible liar. These things are helpful. I wouldn't share BS. So, a car humidifier. Okay. I'm telling you, car humidifier. I bought one of these for myself when I was traveling a lot, like during the winter time. You always have the heat. How often do these aspiring artists or amateur singers or even pro singers, you're in a van, you're in a car, whatever, you're cranking up the heat because you're freezing cold, and then you got to get out and go to a gig. Well, guess what you just did? You just dried everything out. Dried your voice up. Everything in your mouth and your nose is all, completely dry. And now you have to go sing. So there's a cool little, it's like $11 on Amazon. You just plug it into your car, put a little water on it. I don't recommend the diffused stuff. It's nonsense. Put water in it and crank up the heat as much as you want, but it's humidified heat. It's like a heated humidifier. Beautiful for your voice. I'm all about the humidity. So there's another little device that you can use. There's tons of different versions. There's battery powered and USB powered and whatnot versions of these, but there's these little discs that you can put next to your bedside. So if you're traveling on tour, flip a water bottle in it and it keeps cool mist running throughout the night so that the cold air and the dry air in the hotel or apartment or wherever you are doesn't affect you. I always bring a water bottle. There's also these lozenges that are really great.
Are they zinc?
What's that?
Are they zinc lozenges?
So there's two different kinds that I actually work with, and the name is escaping me. One's from Germany, and then the other one is, I can't remember. I'm sorry. Yes. See, Jenny's I'm telling you, I told her to get it, and she texted me or called me afterwards.
Mark.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad you guys use it. But zinc lozenges are great for preventing, illness. I have a little, when I was, I go to LA for NAMM usually in January. Of course, it's online now, but usually when I travel for those kinds of things, or if I'm going to be around people a lot, I bring a little packet of things that I try and keep with me. I'm the type of person that if I know in the wintertime I'm not going to be out, I take a lot of vitamin D. It's my thing. Excuse me. I also carry emergency packets, and I'll drink them with water in the morning because I don't drink orange juice, but I drink the emergency packets. So ultimately, I could sit here and just talk about all the silly things that I do to prepare. But when it comes down to the basics, you have to figure out what works for yourself. The first thing is going to be hydration. Second thing is going to be nutrients, whether it's going to be vitamins or food or anything that's going to keep you energized and satiated, and then sleep. Okay. So if you are not comfortable on tour for any of those reasons, you have to adjust that to accommodate for yourself. For me, I'm not going to be comfortable if my throat is dry after I have to go sing. So I know how to fix that. If I'm going to be sleeping somewhere, I want to make sure that I'm comfortable. If that means wearing an eye mask, or if that means wearing earbuds, or having the Calm app or meditation or something, all those elements have to contribute to your ultimate goal. And that's being the best version of yourself, wherever you are, whatever city you are, whatever location you are. And that's tough, man. That's, again, it goes back to the artists trying to navigate this and not understanding that, it's really easy to get into a routine of performing here in Nashville, or going to the same bar, or going to the same classroom and singing for the same teacher. Okay, now go to every single different city across the United States and be in different rooms with different people and different environments and, altitudes. Those things change. So the best advice that I have for all of that when you're traveling is get to know your body and follow those three elements.
Cool. Vocal zone question mark.
Sure.
From Aaron.
Oh, vocal zone?
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'm sorry. Could you clarify that?
She's saying European at least. Aaron, could you qualify your question a little more? So
Yeah,
Mark,
please forgive me. I want to make sure I answer it as clearly as possible. That might be specific.
And since we're getting close here, what is your best Uncle Mark advice to somebody that wants to become a singer? And we won't qualify it by being a performer, classical singer versus a commercial singer.
Oh, I love that. I'll tell you what, the more that I get wrapped up in all of this, I have to remind myself to be grateful for everything that I've done up until this point, and to recognize the progress I've made up until this point, and the people I've interacted with and all those kinds of things, because that's what keeps you going. It's really easy to be discouraged, but the bottom line, and a great example of this, by the way, is Jacob Collier. because if you look at him, and maybe some people who are listening are familiar, if you're not, you need to look him up because he's a living genius and he's worthwhile to listen to and watch. He has this youthful element to him as he's singing and performing and making music. And it boils down to play. What do we do to an instrument? We play the instrument. What do we do to music? We play music. It's not we practice the piano when we're on stage. No, we're playing music. We're entertaining. So the advice is, remember what it means to enjoy the music and to play, and your why. Why are you doing this? You know, why do you get up in the morning and want to make music? I had a session today with my students at Belmont, and I was saying to them, you know, isn't it funny that you all came back to campus because you wanted to continue a music degree? Honestly, on paper, that's pretty dumb, right? Because with everything's going on, you know, maybe you should go and get into the science field or go into IT or something, you know, because that seems to make more sense. But no, you are discovering your why because you're showing up every day and doing the thing that you want to do. So as an aspiring artist, when you're trying to reach a certain level, you need to first understand why you're doing it and understand throughout the process that you're playing. You have to understand that element of play. Now, the work portion, you know, I was born with work ethic, and my parents instilled that in me from a young age, but I was not given the opportunities that a lot of my friends were given, and something in my DNA gets me up every morning and says, son of a gun, I'm going to get after this day. That's just my mentality. I've always had that. And if that's not your type of, you know, energy in the morning and throughout your career, you need to recognize that there is work that you need to put in various different ways. And that through line is your why, because it's going to suck sometimes. It's not going to be great, but other times it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done. And when you ground yourself with your, why am I doing this? Why does this make me happy? All those things, you're really going to feel fulfilled throughout the process.
That's such excellent advice. And, you know, it's just like in Music Row 411, we tell people part of our education process is helping people assess where they are and what they really want out of it. So someone might come to you and be really fantastic, but then kind of look at that long road ahead of them and what that hard work and diligence really looks like, and might decide to take those talents and treasures and sing in their church, or just stay a local singer, and not shoot for the brass ring. So I think that the fact that you validate singers and you fine tune their gifts so that they suit them, you know, their personality, their skill set is just remarkable. Erin said that the Vocal Zone, she thinks, is the name of the lozenge.
It may be. I'm not sure. I actually, my mom found it. Believe it or not, she found it for me and got it for me as a gift when I was traveling. I may have to double check that because I have it here. I'm not going to leave, but I have it here in my closet, and I'll get it for you, Beth, and we can communicate with Erin. But that sounds about right, actually. Vocal Zone, they're pretty great, right?
Yeah. Any questions out there, guys, for Mark that you're dying to ask him? I think he has just, you know, I'm blown away by the amount of information you've shared with us, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, we actually got some questions that were also submitted ahead of time, and I want to make sure that we get answers to those. And Mark, you touched on a lot of the stuff for vocal exercises, but one of the questions that came in was, what non-vocal exercises do you recommend for improving your performance endurance and being able to, you know, just sing for hours on end, or keep doing shows night after night?
Yep.
Or doing a tour or whatever, but this was submitted anonymously through our pre-form, but if you don't mind touching on that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So ultimately, you have to realize what you're working with your voice, right? You're working with your lungs and obviously the rest of your body, but your lungs and your vocal folds, and then the muscles that actually contribute to allowing you to do those within the style of music that you're singing. So would I try to convince Pavarotti, who is a very large man, to start running every morning? I don't know that I necessarily would. I think he's doing okay. But In terms of somebody that's looking to exercise, doing something that's non-vocal and improving your performance endurance, you're looking at things that, excuse me, include the rest of your body, because ultimately singing is a body experience. It's a physical experience. When you are like swimming is a great exercise. When you're using your body, you want to pay attention to not over exercising the muscles in your neck. Okay. So swimming is a good exercise for that because it's working out the rest of your body. Jogging and running and anything that's actually going to build up your cardiovascular endurance. Now, specifically for performance endurance, you're looking at not only vocal endurance, but actual body endurance. Okay. And so there is a series of things that you can do, and maybe this will have to be a different kind of conversation, but a series of things that you can do to physicalize. Oh, Siri just went off. It's about to beep in a second. I'm not talking to you, Siri. There's a bunch of different exercises.
Know the best vocal
She wants to be in on this, man. She wants to hang out. But there's a series of exercises that you can do to keep your body healthy and in check. And the goal is ultimately not to mess with the things happening in your neck. Don't do a bunch of shoulder exercises where your neck gets all tight, or, unaided abdominal exercises where your abs are getting too tight and your neck is going to be straining. You don't want to do any of that stuff. But what you do want to enforce is your cardiovascular endurance and your breathing endurance. So anything that will help you with that will allow you to have the greater capacity to sustain notes and to have more powerful voices. You don't have to be in elite shape, but also being a couch potato is not going to allow you to be the best performer that you can possibly be. There's a great video of Catherine McPhee online singing on an elliptical. If I had an elliptical in my studio, I would have every singer get on it. I usually have them on a Bosu ball, or sometimes we do jumping jacks or wall sits or handstands, any of those different kinds of things to physicalize the body. But if you have the opportunity to sing on an elliptical, I think actually Beyonce did this too. Sing on an elliptical, and you'll really start to discover which muscles are being worked for singing and which muscles are actually going to be part of your body during that experience.
Wow. So what if somebody wants to work with you? And I know that you have just opened up some slots in your studio.
I did.
And how can people get in touch with you or find out more about Vocal 360 Global, or, seek you out for their own coaching? We want to make sure everybody has your information.
Sure.
If you'll say it, I think Justin can put it in the chat for us.
Okay, fantastic. Well, yeah, I would really love the opportunity to, connect with all of you. You can reach me at my website at www.markthress.com. That has my contact information along with all the things that I've done there, so you can see if we'd be a good fit. And then, like Beth said, I am opening up more weekly dates in my schedule. Starting, it looks like the end of November actually is when my calendar actually opens up. So I'm really excited about that. And if anyone is interested in actually learning and gaining some more vocal coaching or music artist mentorship advice, I'd be happy to reach out to you and set something up.
That's so great. And just so you know, Mark has generously donated an hour of his time for consultation for our Ultimate Songwriter Sweepstakes. So you can tell by this, incredible session of wisdom and information that this is the go-to guy if you want to be a vocal ninja, because he's well, and we will keep all of you posted, especially if you sign up at our sweepstakes.musicroad.com, https://sweepstakes.musicroad411.com. We will send out, after we listen back to the transcript, some of Mark's tips to you. And will you come back and see us another time and talk more about some of your, I feel like we just scratched the surface here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Beth, I would love that opportunity. I think we could really get into the nitty gritty, and those who are interested would get a lot of value out of that. There's so much to dive into. Go ahead.
And tell them your podcast too. Where can they find it?
That was kind of a secret, actually. All right. So the word's out, everybody. I have this passion project that I'm really, really excited about, and I'm grateful that I've been able to, Beth and I are going to be having a conversation on it, and I've been able to speak with some really elite people on it. It's called Notes tentatively, and it's going to be coming out probably by the end of this year. I'll be keeping anyone who follows my socials, you can find it on my website, but I'll be keeping people posted on that. And the conversation is actually a community that I'm building, and I'm exploring the relationship between music, science, and the creative human experience. So I've got some incredible people that are coming on to talk, some people that have been using songwriting to heal their brain from TBI and post-traumatic stress disorder.
On our program.
Yep, exactly. So another close friend who's the vice president of creative marketing for Reba McEntire, a friend of mine who's a creative director at Nickelodeon. So really awesome stuff. And the through line of all of it is they're all musicians in one way or another. They've all done music. So it's a really beautiful way of kind of tying those things together. I'm super excited about it.
Well, you are just, what a gift you are. You know?
I thank you so much, Beth. You're really, this is so kind.
No, I'm honest. I'm from New York. I told you the first time I met you. I was what I thought.
Yeah.
And that if I liked you, I would be president of your fan club for life, and I am. So there you have it. I think Justin.
We definitely got some big fans in the audience here this evening, and thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. If you are watching on the replay, right? If you're catching this not live, but you're joining us, you're watching this later. We're not streaming live. Go ahead and drop your questions in the comments, because guess what? We're going to get those to Mark. We'll have him back on at a later date and time, and we'll get answers, right? So we're here to help you. And as Beth mentioned, Mark has very generously donated some time to help you work one-on-one if you are the grand prize winner of the Ultimate Songwriters Sweepstakes. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but I wanted to make sure we got the last question that was submitted ahead of time. Mark, did you touch on breathing techniques yet? I know we're right at the hour, so if you don't mind, a minute or two to talk about, the question specifically was, how do I work out my breathing techniques and what exercises might I use?
That's a great question. I think the best way to answer that is you have to recognize that you probably have enough breath to use, when you're singing, simply by just using the amount of breath that you're using to speak. Now, every other voice teacher in the room or who's listening is going to go crazy thinking about that, but it's true. Now, the importance of actually utilizing breath is relative to putting gasoline in a car. So I use this analogy. If you put gas in a car, it doesn't make you drive faster. It just makes you go further. So breath support or having more breath doesn't make you sing louder. It just has the potential to make you sing longer. So in terms of the application, finding a way to actually use a breathing technique, I use a standard breathing technique. I think this is used by a lot of different voice teachers, but it's a sort of a square. We diagram it as a square. You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, relax for 4 seconds. And that process will not only obviously calm you down and figure out what part of your body is actually engaging for that process, but utilizing your rib cage to expand and contract is going to really start to allow you to zone in on what's being used for that and focus in on that breathing technique. So that's one that I use. I actually, and this is, I'm kind of different in this realm when we talk about breathing for singers. I don't necessarily dive into breathing too much. I know that's kind of like the lowest hanging fruit for a lot of teachers. I don't do that. My biggest thing is, if you have enough breath, that's great. I can teach you how to put gas in the car, but I need to teach you how to drive it. And so teaching you how to drive it is important. And what I actually tend to do is I start off by using that breathing technique, teaching you that when your lungs are expanding, you're actually expanding your ribs first to expand your lungs and to draw in air. So if your ribs aren't moving, you're not going to be breathing in properly. So practicing expanding your ribs and then getting into a position where you can continue a tone for as long as you possibly can or as long as you need it is actually the best form of breath support.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that does it for the questions that we've had live. And everybody, thank you for showing the love in the comments. We super appreciate you being here. And Mark, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. We've been going live here for about a minute 5. Again, if you want to connect with Mark, if you feel like any of this stuff that he's been sharing has been blowing your mind, just imagine someone of his caliber sitting down with you and working with you one-on-one and working through your specific questions about crafting your voice, about crafting your legacy voice, and helping you develop everything that you want to represent and project with that most important and crucial element, your instrument that you were blessed and born with, that you can use, that is your own signature, that no one else can replicate, and of course that will leave your legacy in the music world. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you, please reach out to Mark, visit markthress.com. I'll put that up here one more time in the banner here. And if you want, you can also get an hour by entering the Ultimate Songwriter Sweepstakes, right? That is a completely free sweepstakes for everybody to enter. If you haven't heard yet, I don't know where you've been. You might have been under a rock or living back in the Middle Ages. We have so many prizes, more than $30,000 that we're giving away in prize packages. But the big grand prize package includes vocal coaching. It includes a brand new website to promote your new awesome voice and your career and your brand. It includes learning how to get your new awesome voice synced up with music and television with Doug Daniels. It includes songwriting and career coaching from Beth Raybeck Hall, none other than our queen here at Music Row 411, and access to our entire educational library and platform at musicrow411.com, which is over a $1,200 value per year value, and we have so much more. We've got prizes to hook up for first, second, and third place. We've got refer a winner, you are a winner, which means that if you share the sweepstakes with your friends and they join, guess what? Not only do they get a chance to win, if they win, you win too. How cool is that, right? We want to hook you up for sharing great information with your friends, with the people that you want to, enjoy this musical journey with, right? Because such a cool thing about this industry is how people driven it is. And even in the times of COVID, even with all the social distancing and even through virtual connection, it's still a people-driven business. And so we want to help you bring your people along for the ride as you find your success in this industry. And that's what the Ultimate Songwriter Sweepstakes is all about. I do want to let you know, though, we have a freaking huge announcement. Just 8 days from now, we have words don't do it justice how huge a hit is. So I'm going to turn this over to Beth to wrap us up and lead us out as she talks about the one, the only, the incomparable Desmond Child, who is going to be performing live and joining us. Mark, I want to thank you again for your time, and Beth, thank you for being here. And I'll wrap it up.
Absolute pleasure.
As we learn about what is going on with Desmond and coming up at the end of the Ultimate Songwriter Sweepstakes.
So everybody, if you are looking to hear from one of the most iconic songwriters, living songwriters, this is the guy. He is the only songwriter to have #1 hits in 6 decades. Think about that. It's a lot of years. It's a lot of hits, from Living on a Prayer, Dude Looks Like a Lady, Livin' La Vida Loca. His current hit is by Ava Max, Kings and Queens, which is pretty fun. And just, it's kind of mind-boggling, the whole scenario of what he's done, what he continues to do. He is a living example of hard work and persistence and excellence. And he is a huge, huge advocate for songwriters and songwriter creator rights. And so he has very graciously, because he loves us and because he loves songwriters, he's going to come on next week and share his wisdom about songwriting, probably tell some funny stories, if I know Desmond, and they are hilarious. And he knows everybody on the planet, whether he's like in Greece and they go to get a burger, he and John Bon Jovi are working and they go to get a burger and they run into John Stamos. It's that kind of stuff. You can't make this stuff up. And he's just a lovely man and very generous. And so I hope you will all come out. And the other thing I will tell you that I have not announced yet is that it's his birthday. So we're throwing a giant, big celebration for him online with our last session, so we can thank him for spending his birthday with us. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and we want you all to jump into the sweepstakes, and you can leave a message for Desmond, and you know he's going to answer questions, and you might just hear some songs you know live, which he doesn't do normally. So anyway, we thank you so much for being with us. Mark Thress, our fantastic vocal performance coach. And we'll see you all on Thursday night over on Facebook for License to Earn, which is all about music licensing. Thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure, Beth. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. It's been great.